This is Mercedes. Their hobbies include winning, breaking records, and more winning. Mercedes' relentless success has left fans craving for sports with closer competition. But would Formula One actually be a more exciting sport without the presence of the 7-time world champions? Or is a single driver and team still going to dominate both championships? Well, to find out, let's rewind back to the 2020 season, in which we'll see what happens both in qualifying and races without the 3 pointed stars. If you thought Lewis's dominance of 11 poles was dreary last season, I've got some more bad news for you. As in our hypothetical season, Max would actually take that dominance further by having 13 pole positions to his name. The only Grand Prix where he wouldn't qualify first are Hungary, 70th anniversary, Italy, and Turkey. Racing Point would occupy pole on 3 of those occasions, with Carlos being the fastest driver for McLaren at Monza. While the pattern doesn't seem too different from what we're used to seeing with Mercedes, the gaps in qualifying paints a slightly different picture. The average gap to second when a Mercedes was on pole position was about 0.25 of a second, whereas when Max was on pole position in our theoretical season, that gap would increase to roughly 0.3 of a second. The increase in margin is largely down to both Bottas and Hamilton being consistently faster than the rest at the end of Q3, so the gap between pole and second usually doesn't reflect the competitiveness for pole position. As for the most part, we're just comparing one Mercedes to the other. This is apparent when we look at the margins from the fastest Mercedes to the quickest non-Mercedes, as that 0.25 second gap more than doubles to somewhere roughly 0.6 of a second. Even the gap from the slowest Mercedes to the next fastest car is still almost half a second. So it seems like the fight for pole position would be slightly closer when averaged out without the two Mercs in play. When we talk about Sunday's success, however, Max would actually conquer once again with a total of 11 victories across the season. That would equal Lewis's tally of 11 wins in 2020, but unlike Hamilton, who missed one round due to COVID, Verstappen would have 5 retirements that were beyond his control. The retirements consisted of an electrical issue in Austria, a mechanical problem at Monza, a power unit gremlin in Tuscany, a sudden puncture at Imola, and a first lap retirement after being caught in a messy accident at Sakhir. Those retirements wouldn't deter Max from winning the Drivers' Championship by Turkey though, as just like with Hamilton in the actual season, no other driver was consistent enough when scoring big points for those retirements to really matter. So despite Verstappen having a lot less points than Hamilton by the same stage of the season, both of them post-Turkish Grand Prix would have enough points to seal the Drivers' Championship. But in the process of that, we'd have either 2 or 3 additional race winners depending on your perspective. The 3 instances I'm referring to are the Austrian, Tuscan, and Emilia Grand Prix. Arguably, Albon had a great chance to win in Spielberg, if only Lewis quote-unquote wasn't such a failure. However, his teammate experienced reliability issues earlier in the race, so it wasn't a given that Alex would have made it to the checkered had the kerfuffle with Lewis not happened. So Leclerc would inherit the first win of the season, as technically he's the first non-Mercedes to complete all 71 laps, while the victory at Mugello would go to Albon, as likewise he was the first non-Merc to complete the attrition-packed race. Last but not least, Ricciardo would come home for a phenomenal triumph at Imola, which could be a great deal of concern for you-know-who. But how about the winning margins during the races, as surely without Mercedes, the winning gaps would be smaller, right? Well, not really. In fact, the winning margins would actually increase substantially without Mercedes in the mix. You see, Max more often than not kept both Silver Arrows honest on Sundays. The trio is often so far ahead of F1.5 that if Mercedes vanishes, it would simply be Max racing against himself. Hence, sans Mercedes wouldn't really bring more excitement to the very front, as Albon is busy being raced too hard, and the other drivers don't have a car that can consistently compete with Verstappen. Perhaps the Constructors' Championship would be closer, I hear you ask. And yes, you are correct. In our alternative 2020 season, Red Bull would win the team's title 2 races later than Mercedes does in real life, as the points lost from Verstappen's Italian nightmare as well as Albon's lackluster performances would prevent the championship from being wrapped up sooner. But still, just like with Mercedes, nobody would pose a real threat to Red Bull's championship prospects. So it seems like the biggest improvement we got in a non-Mercedes season was perhaps more tension during the final minutes of Q3. Apart from that, we still have one driver dominating both Saturdays and Sundays, leading to uninspiring championship fights, concluding several races before the grand finale. While we might appreciate a different character and entity command the sport for a change, that novelty, just like it has done in the past, would wear off very quickly. So instead of dismissing Mercedes' tremendous success as a team, maybe we should look at the competitors who year on year promise so much, yet deliver so little. As proven by some of the sport's biggest icons, success in F1 isn't purely driven by deep pockets. Perhaps the rule changes for 22 would equalize the competition that so many of us desperately want to see, but for now, we can only hope that other teams do a better job with catching up. So what do you think will happen in 2021? Will Mercedes continue their incredible streak of 8 double world championships, or is someone going to finally step up to the challenge? I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.